Joint President Deniz A. Erdal. Thank you for joining us for the 10th episode of the Fireside Cast, the only presidential podcast in Upper Arlington. Today I'm joined in the studio by cabinet member and executive producer of the Fireside Cast, Ryan Huntley. We'll start this week's episode with a special announcement from Ryan.
Hi, Dennis. So a lot of people in UA know that every year my house runs a animated Christmas light show that's paired alongside with music, and the lights will flash in time with the music, and it just creates this really awesome, entertaining effect. And typically each year we collect funds from people who come to see the show. We have a donation box. We collect funds for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. But this year, in UA, principal of Wickliffe Elementary School, Chris Collaros, has recently received a cancer diagnosis. So we are collecting funds in our donation box this year to help go towards a fund that's supporting his cancer treatment. So if you get a chance, come out and see the show. It's at 4460 Reed Road every night at 5 o'clock until midnight from now until New Year's. So come and check it out and help support Mr. Collaros, because he means a whole lot to our community, and your support is greatly appreciated.
And with that, we'll move on to our second topic for this week. Today, November 28th, marked the official end of the midterm season, with the runoff in Mississippi concluding with a win for the Republicans. Cindy Hyde-Smith, who was previously appointed by the Mississippi governor to fill a vacant Senate seat, beat Democratic challenger Mike Espy by about 8%. She won with about 53.9% of the vote, which was a bit higher than a lot of people were expecting, as she did make some controversial statements regarding attending a public hanging. Mississippi was one of the states with the highest amount of lynchings throughout the Jim Crow era. And also she did make some other statements which were deemed controversial. What is your take on this, Ryan?
Well, I know that in this day and age, a lot of things will end up causing controversy, particularly throughout election season. But, you know, with states in the Deep South, oftentimes you're going to see these controversies crop up from, you know, the Confederate era and the Jim Crow era. But I think it's just kind of saddening and slightly disturbing as to the state of our democracy that these kinds of things are happening in what should otherwise be a relatively routine runoff election, and to have the candidate who wins be at the root of such a deep controversy like this kind of speaks to what I think to be the problem with our democracy right now, and it's that everything that happens right now is just embroiled into this tremendous web of partisan gridlock and anger that's going on in our politics right now. And to have a candidate with statements like that winning, I think it shows some issues within the American population and within our electoral system.
And of course, in a state like Mississippi, Cindy Hyde-Smith didn't even have to campaign. Mm-hmm. She was going to win. And so I don't see her reasoning behind making such statements in the first place. In a more close election, I suppose one might try to appeal to the far right using such statements, but Smith was going to win no matter what. Donald Trump carried this state by double digits. However, last year, one of the main reasons why Doug Jones won in Alabama was because his opponent was accused of being a pedophile. And I wonder if that is a slightly different controversy than being accused of being a neo-Confederate. What do you think?
Well, I think that sexual misconduct like this is something that almost everyone universally opposes, which is why I think that it was able to sway more people over to the Democrat side in this race, whereas in the Mississippi runoff, what you're seeing is something that is appealing very much to one far side of the spectrum, whereas it's alienating the other side. And that is what we're seeing all over the nation in our politics right now, is that candidates in safe states are, as you said, they don't have to campaign. So instead, what you see is this competition between candidates of the dominant party just trying to be as ideological as possible, just sort of trying to beat out the partisanship of those they're running against and just become the most far right or the most far left candidate that can be placed on the ballot. So I think that, yeah, you're right, it is a different kind of controversy, because in one sense you're appealing to your very far right basis, your base, who is essentially going to elect you regardless. And on the other side, you're really not appealing to anyone. So I do think it's a different kind of controversy, yes.
And of course, to add on to your statement about how the candidates are becoming more polarizing, in New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beat out the Democratic incumbent in the Democratic primary there, running far to the left of the incumbent there. And so I do agree with your point that candidates from both parties are becoming more ideologically extreme. And of course, with the end of the midterms upon us now, we do have the final results, with the Democrats having 234 seats in the House of Representatives, not too far off from the presidential prediction of 232. Of course, there were quite a lot of flips, a number of them in California, in which the Democrats took control throughout a lot of former Ronald Reagan territory, Orange County. And, however, in the Senate, the Republicans did make a number of flips in Missouri and in North Dakota and Indiana. But those are red states, and so a lot of people were expecting the Democrats to lose there. What is your take on the results?
Well, I definitely think that it's interesting that we've now got one House of Congress that's leaning in one direction and another House that's leaning in another direction. So I think that's going to lead to some very interesting measures being up for debate across the two different houses, things that are going to get past one and not past the other, and vice versa. So I think it'll be interesting to see what manages to make it all the way through. And also, you know, you mentioned your initial prediction of 232 House seats for the Democrats. What about those two seats? Which two flips are you most interested in? Which two did you not expect, and where have Democrats taken these two seats that you didn't expect to happen?
Well, one of the flips which I thought was very interesting was in Virginia, where a Democratic challenger ousted the leader of the Tea Party, and that seat was long considered to be in Republican territory. However, the Democrats have recently been making inroads into Virginia, considering that they've won every presidential election there since 2008. And so I feel like Virginia has been going more blue in these past couple years. Another one of the flips, which I thought was very interesting, it's one of the two Republican flips where Republicans won a seat which was previously held by a Democrat, and this was in Minnesota. There, the Republican won against a Democratic incumbent, and I think this should send some warning lights to the Democrats towards their status in the North. Recently, Democrats haven't been doing too well, losing a lot of the Rust Belt states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and also Ohio to the Republicans in 2016. So I think that this should send some warning signs to Democrats about what could be on the way. However, the Democrats also did have some pickups in the Rust Belt as well, where the Democratic candidate for governor in Wisconsin beat the incumbent Republican governor there, and also the Democrats did take the governor's mansion in Michigan, and they held on to Pennsylvania. So I think the Democrats might be rebuilding their northern wall. However, in Ohio, the Democrats didn't have too much of a good night. Cordray and DeWine seemed a lot closer in the polls than it did on election night. And also, a lot of people were expecting Sherrod Brown to win. Yes, he did win, but people were expecting him to win by a larger margin. The margin was significantly lower than what was expected. So I don't think Democrats really had a good night here in Ohio, and the Republicans, I think they feel pretty comfortable right now going on ahead. The blue wave was definitely not a blue wave. A blue ripple, perhaps, blue maybe, but it wasn't the blue wave a lot of people were expecting.
Or hoping for, really. I mean, I know that a lot of the Democratic campaigns out there were very much based on this idea of getting out more Democratic votes and, you know, getting Democrats more engaged than they've seemingly been in these previous elections. But what do you think about the Democrats who were elected? Because even though this wasn't the blue wave that I think a lot of people were expecting, it was an interesting night, to say the least, for Democrats, because we have gotten a lot of firsts in the government with this election. We have one of the youngest people ever elected into Congress. We have, of course, the first Native American woman in Congress. And in Colorado, we have an openly gay governor. So that's interesting. What do you think about these really powerful firsts that the Democratic vote has gotten into office?
Indeed, I do think it is a year of the firsts. And of course, Colorado being a major victory for the LGBTQ community. And Arizona did elect its first female senator, Kyrsten Sinema, who was a Democrat. She was trailing behind her opponent on election night. However, when the mail-in ballots came in, she came out on top. And so a lot of people weren't expecting a Democratic flip there, but it did flip blue. And also, Dean Heller lost in Nevada to the state's first female senator as well. So indeed, there were quite a lot of firsts. And I know for many years the Democratic Party has been trying to increase turnout. I think they have been successful in some states, like Texas, where Beto O'Rourke came very close to beating Ted Cruz. I believe he ended the night with about 47%, which is something you don't expect of a Democrat in a ruby red state like Texas. However, the Democrats haven't been doing too well in other states like Georgia, where Brian Kemp beat Stacey Abrams, who would have been the state's first African-American governor. And in Georgia as well, Ron DeSantis beat Andrew Gillum, who would have also been the state's first African-American. Also, the incumbent senator in Florida, Bill Nelson, was defeated by the current governor of Florida. In in a race which was expected to go to Bill Nelson. It was close, but Bill Nelson was slightly up in the polls. And so I think a lot of the polls have been underestimating the Republican turnout in a lot of states. Now, there is one exception to this, and that's Nevada. In Nevada, the Democrats have been constantly underrepresented. In 2016, a lot of people were expecting Donald Trump to win in Nevada. He didn't. It went to Hillary Clinton. But also, this year, a lot of pollsters were predicting that Dean Heller would keep his seat. He didn't. But in other states, it's the exact opposite, where the Republicans are constantly underrepresented.
And I wonder really if that has something to do with the hyper-partisanship that we're seeing that's driven a lot of people, I think, to consider themselves independents right up until the night of the election and then break one way or the other, because there's really no choice for independent voters in such a hyper-partisan election climate. So I wonder if those who respond as undecided right up until the election and then break in one direction or the other have something to do with that, and if so, if hyperpartisanship is at fault.
Yes, I agree. And with that, we'll move on to our third and final topic for this week, and that is the Winter Dance Raffle, which will be held throughout next week, starting on Monday and up to Thursday. The class officers and I, and possibly some cabinet members, will be selling raffle tickets during lunch. And these raffle tickets will be $2, and the winner will receive 2 tickets to the Winter Dance, which has a theme of Winter Wonderland this year. And of course, I will now reveal the price of those tickets for the Winter Dance. I know this is very highly anticipated among the student body. This year, the class officers and I have decided that the tickets shall be priced at $15. And I think that's a very low amount.
As do I, particularly compared to the way it's been in the past. So
I believe
thank you to you and the class officers for getting that to be so affordable for us.
Indeed, and I would also like to thank Mr. Wagner. He did, of course, significantly help us lower the price, and of course, my other fellow class officers who assisted in lowering the price this year. I believe for the homecoming dance, it was at about $30, so a 50% decrease. So yes.
Thank you very much.
And so yes, the winner will receive 2 tickets to the Winter Dance, and the collected money will go towards charity, of course, and we do expect to raise a lot of money. I know UA is a community that is very generous, and of course in the winter months it is important to help those who are not as well off as we here in Upper Arlington are, and I encourage all of my fellow classmates to participate in the Winter Dance Raffle. Major funding for the Fireside cast has been provided by Serpent Cinematography,
Evolved Turtle Productions,
Thunderstruck Studios,
and Hayat Studios,
and by the Combat Robot Kev Foundation, empowering robotics engineering since 2016.
And from generous contributions from viewers like you. Thank you! If you'd like to support the Fireside Cast, you can check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/firesidecast.
Or you could contact a cabinet member for further information.